Welcome to Climify, the podcast that connects climate scientists and design educators together so that we can help combat our climate crisis in our classrooms. The discussions on this program are geared to help you climify your syllabi to assign projects that not only teach design fundamentals, but also can have a positive impact on our climate.
This episode is brought to you by Renourish. Renourish is your one-stop online resource for sustainable design and systems thinking strategies and tools for the graphic designer. You can learn more about Renourish on their website at re-nourish.org, or you can follow them on Twitter and Facebook at Renourish.
Welcome to Climify. I'm Eric Benson, and I'll be your host this season as we talk to climate experts from all over the world to help us design educators fight the climate crisis in our classrooms. And yes, I'm also a design educator. I've been teaching for 15 years here at the University of Illinois. But even if you're not a design educator listening to this show, there's so much useful information jam-packed in each that you too can learn how to do your part to help reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. This week on Climify, we're joined by Sahara James. Sahara was born and raised in Queens, New York. She received her associate's degree in liberal arts after she went on to complete her bachelor's in environmental studies at CUNY Hunter College in 2018. She's now a part-time candidate at the Bard MBA in sustainability, where she has taken on many student leadership roles. In her most previous role, she was an assistant project manager conducting industrial hazard assessments for lead and paint and water in New York City buildings. Sahara is currently a senior sustainability consultant at Kinetic Communities Consulting, where she currently oversees the Electrify Staten Island pilot. In her free time, Sarah enjoys traveling, cooking, biking, and yoga. All right, Sahara, welcome to Climify. It's wonderful to meet you, and I'm really excited that you volunteered to take about 40 minutes today to talk with me and our listeners about what you do and give us some advice to bring into our classrooms. So I want to get down to sort of the basics of who you are and find out more about where you live, what you do, where you came from, and what excites you about the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Eric. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today and add whatever I can to this already fruitful conversation that you started around design.
Thank you.
So as you mentioned, my name is Sahara James, she, her pronouns. I was born and raised in Queens, New York. I live in Brooklyn, New York right now, but I'm probably moving back to Queens in like 2 weeks. And so very much a New York City person, all public New York City schools all my life. I got an associate's degree from Bard High School, early college in 2013. After that, I did my undergrad at Hunter College in environmental studies. I was there until 2018, and I am right now a part-time student at the Bard MBA in sustainability. So did a bit of a roundabout with the Bard College. So that's a little bit of my educational history. In terms of more professional experience, I started doing internships throughout undergrad that had anything to do with the natural environment and getting my hands in dirt, because that's what I really like that. And my most previous position, I was an environmental scientist at an environmental engineering consulting firm. I was on top of project management, and I also did environmental hazard testing. So testing for lead paint, mostly in apartments and schools throughout New York City. Right now, I am a senior sustainability consultant with Kinetic Communities Consulting. We call ourselves KC3 for short. It is New York's MWBE certified social enterprise benefit corporation. I always have to say that slowly. I know.
Really long name.
Very long name, long description. We do great work. We advocate for and implement strategic energy equity market transformations for diverse New York City communities. So basically making sure that everyone is included in the energy equity transition. So we are the entire team. The entire team is located in New York City, and so is our office, but we do work mostly remotely. My main role right now is that I am the campaign director for a pilot called Electrify Staten Island. This pilot is working towards the goal of increasing the adoption of clean heating and cooling technologies for residents in Staten Island. So this includes things like installing air source heat pumps or a more efficient boiler, or sealing doors and windows around your house to improve the energy efficiency. So we're really focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions in terms of the residential sector. And then this pilot is also complemented by Electrify Queens, which more focuses on solar in the borough of Queens. So that is where I came from. That is where I am now. And I'm pretty early in my career. I'm in my mid-20s. So this explanation will get much longer within the next 10 and 20 and 30 years. So.
Yeah. So your day job is working there at that position. And then you're also getting an MBA, maybe by night,
Yes.
Crusader at night. What do you plan on doing with the MBA? And it's in sustainability, correct?
Yeah. So yes, this is my last year of my MBA, so can't wait.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I would actually say that where I am right now in my professional career, I'm really, really satisfied with. I really have a lot of appreciation and dedication to the work that I do now with KC3. So I do see myself here for the kind of short foreseeable future. In terms of where I see myself after, I will say, and maybe this is a little different from like the average career professional, but I don't put too much pressure on what I want to do in the next 5 years, because I'm very sure that the way society and my brain and my interests will move, like I will just land somewhere else that is still relevant to what I care about. Mm-hmm. I'm just generally interested in whatever we can do to get people and nature to have a more harmonious relationship. And it's funny because like when you think of my job title, you don't even glean all that, but yeah. That's really what it stems down to. Like I want people to be around for a while, but I want our nature to be intact and be beautiful and something we can appreciate and enjoy for a while. And I will, because I'm a city girl and I've just been here my whole life, I'm going to do it within New York City, and I'm going to do it in a way that's relevant to New York City. 70% of greenhouse gas emissions in New York are from buildings. And then through my last job, yes, exactly, a very high number. And it does make sense. You could also see how transportation is probably a really big part of that number. But just considering the fact that, with my last position, that kind of got me into like buildings and building infrastructure, along with my dad having been a construction worker and electrician throughout his life. So I liked helping him with handsy stuff. So it's just kind of like a natural coming together that has worked out so well. And that's why I say I really like my position now, because I feel like it includes everything that I care about. But I just see myself moving in a direction, as long as I'm doing work that has to do with making sure that everyone has the same access to resources, while also reducing our collective carbon footprint. Like that is where I'm at.
Yeah, that I was going to say that you have a very similar mindset that I did when I was your age, and that I was just sort of going where I ended up, and it wasn't until I got into academia where I started to have to think about, okay, well, next year I need to focus on this, right? Because they were more demanding of, your output. But back in the day, it was, I'm going to end up where I end up, and it's going to be good because I'm interested in it, right? I'm not going to be, doing something else.
Yeah, maybe I'll grow out of it. Maybe I won't.
I don't know. I think it's a good life to sort of, end up where you end up.
Yeah. And I'm just confident that it'll be good and impactful. So.
Oh, I'm sure too. I was going to ask you though, with that 70% is a high number, right? And I was going to say, with the work you do at KC3, does your team know, like, all those, seemingly small things like sealing windows and doors and all that, how much can you save? Like how much greenhouse gas emissions can be saved? Do you have a number with that?
That is a number that I'm not sure that anyone has really come up with yet. And I guess the question you're asking is like if we did everything according to plan, how much can we reduce it by? I am sure that there's maybe someone who's come up with that number, but even then it's extremely hypothetical. Hypothetical because the work that has to be done is not free, of course, right? You have to pay for the materials and for the construction themselves, the contractors that are going to do the work, and who is paying for it? Is it people that have the money for it? Is it large building owners, property owners? And even then, how much of these buildings have existing infrastructure that allows for some of these retrofits to be as efficient as possible? There are a lot of variables that go into it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And I would say for this project that I work on, Electrify Staten Island, we are directly addressing the fact that right now there isn't legislation that addresses the 1 to 4 family housing sector in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions on any time scale. And so that's why we've kind of taken this route to kind of prove, which is very interesting. It's mid-size and larger buildings have legislation coming through the Climate Mobilization Act. But right now there isn't anything for smaller residential buildings. So we just, through this project, we're trying to prove that like, hey, there needs to be legislation about how much greenhouse gas emission reduction we're looking for from small buildings within the next few years, because there's an impact there too. We can't ignore it. So we're doing a lot of weed whacking here. Yeah,
well, I think that needs to be done. As a homeowner myself, right? I learned a lot about insulation in your attic, right? And
yes,
so we had some folks come in and kind of seal off areas in our house, and they told us like, you're going to save X amount of money. They didn't talk about greenhouse gases, but they talked about you're going to save X amount of money.
Yeah. But that's one of the interesting parts of it is that to be honest, a lot of people don't really care about how much energy they're going to save in their apartment of their home. A lot of people do, of course,
sure,
but if you really want the selling point, it really comes down to how much money can you save after installing this? What is the upfront cost going to look like? Can we provide you with any financial help when it comes to those upfront costs? Because that's where the inequity comes in, right? Like if, a heat pump may cost a few $1,000s and then the installation is another few $1,000s. But if you as a homeowner or a renter do not have those upfront costs, you can be as, eco-conscious as you want to be. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So that's why we try to address that barrier too.
That's smart.
But it's very hard. Right now, what we're doing is kind of pulling on programs that already offer money for people to have free energy audits or to free opportunity to actually get the work done itself. Yeah. And a lot of it is based on income eligibility. But I would say that the money is one of the primary concerns when it comes to you as a homeowner. And that's why we can't, just as a collective, when we talk about sustainability, the selling point a lot of the time isn't how much greenhouse gas emissions you're going to save or how much waste you're going to be not putting in a landfill. It's how does this actually impact my life today? And that's not to say we shouldn't consider those things, but let's be honest and kind of like leave that to the professionals, because individuals are thinking about their day to day for the most part. Right. And that is fine for now. We need to like kind of work within those terms, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So would your advice be, anyone that's listening to this, you're a homeowner, I know we contacted our energy company and they said, hey, do this audit. And they told us it's going to cost you X dollars, but you're going to save even more. Mm-hmm. So that'd be good.
Yeah. I like to speak to the accessibility of it, right? The autonomy. If you are in a position where you can pay that upfront cost and you are willing to see that get paid off over time, see what your ROI is, then by all means, do it. If you can do it, do it. I'm not telling people who have the capacity to make these decisions to not make them. I'm saying that we as consultants and implementers and people who make legislation, we have to consider the people who cannot make those decisions. To make them as accessible as possible. But to individuals who are able to, upgrade those LED lights or break down those walls and put a new installation or get a new heating and cooling system, by all means, do it. It's going to benefit you. It's going to make your home way more comfortable. You are going to save money on your energy bills, and it just makes sense.
Yeah, well, thank you for that advice. I want to go back to your comment about your father, because you mentioned he was good handyman, and then it kind of picked up some stuff from him. I want to ask you about why you got into this social and environmental justice work, and was it something that happened with your family, or something else that kind of inspired you to go down this route?
Yeah, sometimes I think I'm a little underwhelming because I don't have a huge, gigantic, pivotal story that led me.
Well, I'm the same way, so
Yeah. Definitely more of a gradual thing for me. Like I mentioned before, I've always loved nature, watching nature on TV, being in nature, being around animals and plants, being outdoors. And as I got into high school, and I started to learn more about global warming and climate change, naturally, that was just like top of my head. I'm like, wait a minute, we're destroying the only planet that we are capable of living on right now. Okay, this isn't making sense. What are we going to do about it? And I remember when I first got introduced to the topic of climate change, I thought of it as a very earth problem. Like, this is something we have to fix our earth. We need to reduce pollution. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions because we need to make the earth better. This is about giving back to the plants and the animals and the whales and the polar bears.
Everything.
Yeah, everything. And I like that because I do have an intrinsic care for these non-human things. However, I do still care about people a lot. Yeah, I love being around people. Humanity disappoints me many times, but I love humanity generally.
Yes.
I love humanity. I don't like humanity. I think that's the best way to put it.
Good. I like that distinction. Yes. I'm the same way.
Yes, exactly. So in learning about climate change, but also in a way kind of separating people from the equation, something about that wasn't resonating with me. If we're going to talk about sustaining our world, why are we not also including ourselves in that world? I think a lot of the times when we think of nature, we think of humans as separate, which I think is completely false. Humans are a part of nature. Even all the quote unquote unnatural things we do are natural to us. So I think that was something that was missing for me. So in my last year of undergrad and like coming right out of undergrad is when I was introduced to the concept of sustainability, which to me just resonated so much more. Okay, how do we get people and the environment and our business, our governments, the things that we do as people to kind of collectively work together to sustain all of it. I like the word sustainability. The word sustainability is so simple. It is literally to sustain. How do you get something to last as long as possible? How do we get people to last as long as possible? How do we get nature to last as long as possible? How do we get the infrastructure that we have, whether it's governments, physical infrastructure, organizations, business, schools, hospitals, how do we get all of that on the same page to have as much longevity as possible? So that just kind of made sense to me. And then what I also realized was I had this kind of misconception that sustainability was an industry. And once I got into undergrad and I decided to approach sustainability from a business perspective, I'm like, sustainability is not an industry, it's a lens. You can go into any industry with sustainability in mind and do work that you think is important. And even then, you still have to narrow it down because it's like, well, wait, what role do you want within that company? Do you want to be in the C-suite where you make really big decisions and have control over a lot of the flow of cash flows and things like that? Do you want to work more on a consulting level? Do you want to work within design? Do you want to work within waste? There's so many different angles because sustainability itself and addressing climate change is such a multifaceted issue that there are ways for everyone in every job role and every industry to keep it at the forefront. And so as much as I remember learning, like as much as I like that, it also like stressed me a little bit. I was like, dang, I still got to figure out what I'm going to do within this box.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yes. And that's when I kind of made the connection between the previous job I had where I was working within buildings, and then where I am now. I'm like, oh, buildings are a huge opportunity for, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving operations. And again, New York City, 70% of greenhouse gas emissions, huge area for impact. I see myself in New York City for the foreseeable future. Might as well. It all just kind of, the puzzle pieces just all just kind of fell into place. And I was like, I'm going to let that do that.
Well, I like your viewpoint on the lens of sustainability. And I think as educators who are listening to this might have had, like I do, questions from my students saying, we want to make an impact out there in the world. I can't find a job that says sustainable designer. What do I do? And that advice is great. It's like, just brings that lens of sustainability to any job that you're doing. Mm-hmm. At any time, right? Just learn more about it so that when you're there, you can implement the change while you're working.
That is absolutely true. I've actually had some faculty and advisors at my program sing a very similar tune. And I would even say, and I was also going to talk a little bit more about this later, that part of the reason why sustainability in general, in terms of the business world, is still so kind of like added on as an afterthought, as opposed to baked into the original, concept, which obviously at this point is not going to happen. Sustainability, has kind of been on our radar since maybe the 80s soonest, it's really within the past 10, 20 years that you've seen it really explode a lot more. So, just the way that that's gone, of course, now it's a bit of an afterthought for many companies, many organizations. However, there's still areas for us to consider it first, and not only consider it, but I would love for sustainability to get to a point where we don't even talk about sustainability anymore, because it's just naturally baked into
foundational, right?
Exactly, it's foundational. We don't have to have a role that says sustainability consultant. You're just a consultant, and sustainability is just always on your radar.
You have to do it.
Exactly. The same way, saving money is always on your radar. Saving time is always on your radar.
Right.
How can you also just naturally reduce your greenhouse gas emissions or put off the end of life phase of your product? So I would like to think of it that way. And I know that my title, being senior sustainability consultant, is a little anti to that, but that's okay, baby steps.
I like that, because I remember when I first started teaching, there was no, and I was, at that time, I was thinking, okay, there has to be a class called sustainable design, where, I wasn't thinking about it as I do now, which is like, I'm going to bring, like you do, I'm going to bring that lens in. Mm-hmm. So I had an elective class, sustainable design, and it was at the same time as a class on like animation. And so all the design students signed up for the animation class, right?
Right.
So, like, when you think about it, there really is no comparison. What's really a more important, class for our society here? Animation, yeah, of course, it's fun, but I mean, yeah, like we gotta do something about our climate.
Yeah. And like, not for nothing, but I mean, every single thing that is in a landfill right now was originally on a piece of paper from like a product designer, right? Like every single one, every little thing from small to large, all the trash that exists now was designed at some point. So yeah, beautiful trash.
I think the statistic was that 80% of the eventual environmental impact of anything that you're going to make happens in that design phase. You making the wrong decisions will have a huge negative outcome later on. So you're right. I mean, designers need to do something, but we need partners here. We can't just do that on our own.
Yes, absolutely. No pressure, but pressure.
Well, that makes me wonder what you think us as design educators can do more of to help promote that lens of sustainability in our classrooms, and also in our daily lives.
Yeah, I would go back to what you just said previously, that you guys need to collaborate. Like, there has to be collaboration. a collection of efforts is needed, right? We need design educators, we need businesses, local governments, and consumers to all promote sustainable living at the same time, though. That's the only way it's going to happen. And like we just said, design educators have a special role because how a product is designed dictates how it will be used, how it will be disposed of, how long it will be used before it's disposed of. And as an educator, you're leading the next generation of designers. So obviously there's pivotal opportunity there to have new ideation about design and use. But it's also really important to remember that, back to my last point, you know, if you as a designer, Eric, you can make your products as recyclable and biodegradable or compostable as possible. If when I throw my, you know, your recyclable bottle away, you know, Department of Sanitation comes to pick it up and they drop it in the same landfill, then it was for nothing, right? If you're all that wonderful design that you did to make it modular and make the use space long and make it recyclable, if it doesn't actually get recycled, it defeats the entire purpose. So I want design educators to always feel empowered to know that they have so much control over, again, like the use and the disposal of that product. However, we cannot take any onus at all off of local governments who have like kind of like trash municipal infrastructure to be like, okay, are we actually recycling things that end up in a quote unquote recycle bin? And if something is compostable, does someone actually take it to somewhere where it's gonna get composted? It's such a systems issue, and it needs a system solution. That's literally the only way it's going to work. So designers, stay on top of your game, keep making things as sustainable as you can make it, and at the same time we're going to keep putting pressure on larger organizations to make sure that there's infrastructure to use these products and dispose of these products in sustainable ways.
Well, let's take a quick break here for some commercial messages.
Where do young designers see themselves at the intersection of climate change and innovation, and how can we teach that intersection in the classroom? Designers are problem solvers, capable of imagining solutions for a more sustainable future. We have a bigger role to play in all phases of the design process, not just the beginning. My name is Rachel Cifarelli, graphic designer, recent college grad, and part of the Climate Designers EDU team. And after graduating, I realized today's classrooms tend to skip over that universal side of design. So if you're a design educator, I want to hear from your students. Help set in motion the first ever project that centers students at the intersection of design education and climate change. I want to know what your students think about sustainable design, how they see climate change impacting their future careers, and what even comes to mind when they hear the term climate design. Send your students to climatedesigners.org/edu/newwave-survey to take the 5-question survey or sign up for an interview with me. Help me inform a new wave of design education, one that teaches every designer how to be a climate designer.
Yeah, you mentioned systems, and that's something that I'm working on right now. And I wrote a chapter in my book about this idea of everything is connected. These systems are at play. Putting on your like consultant hat for you've had it for a while. Put that on, and how can design, or what are the strengths of what you know about designers? How can we use those strengths to think more in systems so that we're not just designing the bottle, we're helping fix that system where it does go where it needs to go. It needs to go back into becoming what Bill McDonough called a technical nutrient, back into the system to be reused, you know? What would you tell us?
I would say that, again, y'all, as designers, you have a lot of control, obviously, of course, over how the product is used. And then there's also onus on larger organizations. In terms of strengths, to me, I mean, that's the strength right there. And then as an educator, you know, again, you are literally bringing in the new generation of people who are learning how to do this.
Mhm.
I will say I've never taken a design class or anything in my life. I have taken a circularity course.
Well, yeah,
So
that's
this,
perfect.
yeah. I was like, actually, that's where I'm pulling a lot of my information from. I would say that even the publicity around making certain products more sustainable and talking about how that product should be used in a way so that, you know, it's less emissions or less energy use and then disposed of properly, and making kind of more of a noise, more of a stink about the fact, hey, like, we are designing products this way, but it goes to waste if that product is still ending up in a landfill because that's where the garbage truck took it. So I think that, and maybe this gets more into kind of the political side of things. If you are a designer that works for a large designing company, and maybe there are people who also lobby within your company, like that is some pressure right there to say, you know, we need to design products in this way and we'll do it, but you guys have to play your role too. What are you guys doing about creating infrastructure that can actually make it so products are disposed of, recycled, composted properly? Like kind of like, you know, we're doing our part. When are you going to do yours?
Yeah, gotcha. One thing that comes to mind too when you're talking about this, because I heard this recently from a number of educators, is that they want to do this. Like what you're describing, they want to do, but they don't feel like they have the knowledge yet. It's kind of like educating the educators really on circularity, sustainability, and climate. What is there like a book or series of things that you suggest maybe someone who wants to do this in their classroom but needs some more info to get moving? Is there something you recommend them to watch or read that helped you, for instance, with your, you know, progress in your career?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So my circularity class, if I can do a quick plug, was my professor, John Home. Really great, really smart guy, knows so much about like supply chain and circularity. And he's the one I did my circularity class with. And he has taught us a lot about the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the work that they do when it comes to creating coalitions around making supply chains more sustainable. And they do a lot of partnerships with large organizations to kind of fund new development around new products that can be more sustainable, better reused, better recycled, compostable, all that. And then also in my quote unquote spare time, I listen to a podcast called Supply Chain Revolution. And I actually learned about this podcast through a friend of his who hosts this, was a guest on this podcast one day. And that was another term I haven't brought up yet, is just like general supply chains, right? Like,
okay.
Starting from extraction of materials to manufacturing to use phase to disposal. There are areas all throughout that phase to consider, like how we can reduce our impact as much as possible. So those are just two things, but I'll definitely say there's an abundance of resources and organizations out here who have just started to do this work. I even know like IKEA has started to do a lot of work around making their furniture more modular, being able to like switch out pieces, buying used furniture. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of opportunity to work with organizations that are already huge, who are doing a lot of research into this type of stuff. So don't be afraid to look at that.
I agree with you on that supply chain comment, because I asked my class, not just once, but many classes, you know, where does paper come from? You know, a lot of the designers we graduate go and work in printing, right? They're doing stuff for magazines or, you know, editorial work. Where does paper come from? They, you know, trees, they don't know where. And so I had them do an informational graphic, basically, of the supply chain of paper. You know, where does it start? Not just that it's a tree, but how many trees and what part of the world, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I think that was super useful for them. So I totally agree with you on the supply chain part of it.
Absolutely. And I would say one thing that I also learned about supply chains through my courses is also just like the scale of the supply chain. So there's obviously the phases of where do things come from, but how long do those, raw materials have to travel overseas to get here to finish the second part of manufacturing that product, right? Like that's another thing that's just kind of wild to me. It's very interesting how globalization has brought so much good things into our society, like the fact that we can just get from place to place easier and move things from place to place easier, but boy, does it have a cost.
Yeah, the trade-offs, right?
Huge trade-offs.
Well, we've been talking a lot about what you think we should do as design educators, and I want to kind of turn it around on you and say, I want you to be in our shoes. And you're going to walk a few miles in our shoes and be a design educator for a project in one of our classes. So if you were asked to teach a design project, what would it be? What would you ask them to do?
Yes, this question is the one I spent the most time thinking about.
Yeah, I sent this ahead of time to Sahara.
Oh, yes, sorry, breaking the fourth wall.
Full transparency for our audience.
Yes. So like I said, I've taken a circularity class. So when it comes to design, maybe this is a little simple, but I like the lesson that I think would come out of this. So I could see myself assigning a design project. I would ask students to think of a product that you use on a fairly consistent basis. Doesn't have to be every day, but regularly. And for some reason, that product is just not as convenient to use as it should be for as often as you use it. Redesign this product to make it in a way that's more convenient and more useful, and don't consider anything else. Just consider making that product more convenient to use. That's the first part of the assignment. The second part of the assignment would then say, okay, take this product that you have made more convenient, and now, kind of like what we were talking about before, shoehorn sustainability onto the end of it now. So what can you do to this product now to either reduce the amount of raw materials that it needs, or shorten the manufacturing process, make it recyclable, biodegradable, whatever you can do to reduce the impact that that producing this product may have, and see like what that process looks like how difficult versus how easy that is. And the outcome of this assignment is to kind of get a lesson in the fact that shoehorning sustainability onto the end of after it's already been designed, or when it's already out there, is probably the much less efficient way to do it. And if you consider these impacts from the time you put pen to paper, you're probably better off. You're going to save a lot of time and a lot of energy. And that would be my assignment. Again, just grain of salt, because I haven't taken a design class, but.
Well, I think that is to our benefit, because that's amazingly simple, but I never thought of that before. And I've been doing this for many years. I always, it's like, let's make a sustainable package, right? Or let's do this. And so I think maybe like you could even say like the third step to that is like, now let's go back to the beginning.
Yes.
And do it from the very beginning, and include the planet as a stakeholder in this project.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So this is a 3-part assignment. That's
beautiful. It's one of those like, surprise, right? This is why we're in this problem, because we're trying to get an extra thing when it should be, the first thing we think about.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Okay. And that goes back to the point we were making earlier about design educators and designers. You guys are so important in this process. However, I'm a big believer in displacing the blame wherever the blame needs to be, or the responsibility, not blame, the responsibility.
Right. Opportunity for improvement.
Opportunity for improvement, exactly.
Right.
And so there's opportunities for designers and design educators, but there's also opportunities for companies to fund their R&D so that designers can actually create and try and test these products, there is opportunity for local governments to step in and make sure that there's actually infrastructure for the disposal of products to have as minimal of an impact as possible. And then there's also responsibility on us as consumers to make better choices where we can make better choices. If you just don't have the extra $10 to buy that recyclable water bottle, that's fine for now. But for those of you that do it. If you have the audacity, if you have the space to do it, do it. My metal water bottle is my best friend. It comes with me literally everywhere. And I haven't held a plastic bottle. I can't remember the last time I had a water bottle in my hand. And also just kind of a final point that I had as a tip to more individuals who want to kind of make their life more sustainable. The most sustainable item is the one that you already own. Always the one that you already have.
Wow.
So I'm a big believer in when purchasing things, to buy things that are good enough quality that you're going to get as much long use out of it as you possibly can. And also just reusing that thing over and over again until the wheels fall off.
Right.
I bought 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, I bought a 2009 Toyota Camry. So I bought a very used car. And I purposely got a Toyota Camry because I knew the connotation that Toyotas and Nissans have when it comes to like longevity. So I was like, I'm going to get this little $6,000 car and it gets me from A to B safely. The AC works. And again, I'm going to run it till the wheels fall off. And after that, I'm just going to replace the wheels.
Drive it into the ground, basically.
Drive it into the ground.
Right.
And I take that same approach to food. I'm very big on what's already in the fridge. I'm big on that with my clothing. If there's an event I have to go to, I'm like, do I already have an outfit that I can wear to this event? Because it's really us as consumers, it's really our consumption that has a lot to do with our collective impact. So if we can do our best to reduce our consumption, that's kind of like top of the food chain in terms of how we can make our lives more sustainable. Being more decisive about how you throw things away that's kind of like the last step. You want to start with how much do you consume? How can you reduce that? And how can you reuse as much of what you already have?
Yeah, I think it's a reason why like reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce. We forget about the reduce part when we say it first, but it's said first for a very specific reason. That's a great way to end it. But I want to give you one more parting shot opportunity, because I can't let you go without asking you this as you're our first soon-to-be MBA and sustainability grad.
Yes.
And the point about like money earlier on in the show about that can be a big factor. So I'm not arguing that all designers should go out and get an MBA, but what can designers, design educators take from the work that you're learning in your MBA in sustainability into their own work to help them in terms of maybe even convincing people they work with, like, let's jump on board this more. We're not doing enough of this. The designer may know a lot of information, but they just can't convince that C-suite person, like you mentioned, to put forward the budget for it.
Yeah, it's funny because that's a question that almost is kind of central to the MBA curriculum that I've had so far. Like, how do you convince you can have this great idea about how to get sustainability into the company, but how are you going to convince the C-suite? And I will say that's where my accounting and finance classes come in. It has to affect what their idea of what the bottom line is. We as sustainability people, we think of a triple bottom line. But a lot of people in the C-suite, they're still just thinking about how much is this going to cost? Will this add to our debt? What is this going to add to our balance sheet? When are we going to get paid back for this? And so I don't want to write that off, right? Because that is important. If that's something that they consider, then it does behoove designers and people who, whether they are more focused on finance or not, to maybe partner with someone who does have more of that capability of doing a financial analysis, a cost cost benefit analysis and see, okay, how can we make it so that you can bring this product forward and say, okay, it's going to take this much of an investment, but you'll get your money back in 3 years. So I'm a big believer in collaboration. If you are the design expert, partner with someone who's the financial expert and see where you can come up with a proposal that can really convince that COO, the CFO, about this new product or this new idea that you have. But I love leaning on other people for for expertise. But I definitely don't. It, like you said, it's very important because they can, someone in the C-suite can shut down your whole idea just because it's too expensive or the payback is too long. So that's something you want to go in with and have those numbers ahead of time before you even go into that big office.
So seek wise counsel from people who know about that.
Absolutely. We are all smarter together.
Well, thank you, Sahara. It's been a great time talking with you, and I really appreciate all your climate and community action work there. And is it Queens?
Yeah. Yes, it is Staten Island that I work in, Electrify Staten Island. And yes, we are working with Staten Island residents to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions.
Well, thanks again, and it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in today to Climify, but don't leave just yet. I've got more goodness for you coming up. Music. As the pandemic has really affected our friends in the performing arts, where they're unable to book shows, tour, or sometimes even get into a recording studio, I thought I'd highlight one at the end of each of our episodes. Since this is a podcast for designers, the musicians featured on each are also designers. Well, I'll turn it over to our artists to explain who they are and the reasons behind their music.
Hello there. My name is Paul Nini, and I am a professor of design at The Ohio State University. As a side hustle, I've been making music and releasing records since the mid-'80s, with a variety of so-called indie rock groups, both here in Columbus, Ohio, and in Chicago, USA. I've also released a fair amount of solo recordings. The song you've heard in this podcast is called Relax Part 1, and it comes from a release titled The Mannerist Age from way back in 2003. This song seems to be an early example of a musical style that my son refers to as lo-fi, chill, instrumental hip-hop. I'm kind of clueless as to such things, but he's not, so I'll take his word on that. To listen to more songs, please see my Bandcamp site, San Paulo. That's one word spelled SANPAULO.bandcamp, again, just one word, .com. Once more, sanpaulo.bandcamp.com. Thanks so much for listening, and keep fighting the good fight, my fellow climate designers.
Thanks for listening to Climify. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. To catch all the latest on Climify, you can follow us on Instagram at Climify Podcast. Climify is part of Climate Designers. Learn more at climatedesigners.org/edu.